is I was the fire protection engineer for Oconee Nuclear. And down in Unit 3, and I think still Unit 3, right, is this young man right here, Matt Durham, pulls the levers on the reactor there. And we had not met just because, frankly, his unit was less screwed up than the other units when I got there. So I was, obviously you get hired to fix problems. But I was just talking to people on site, and when it comes to theology and politics, I can't shut up. I just enjoy the conversation. And I was with our fire marshal, and he said, "Man, you sound like bacon." And I thought, "Smell like bacon?" And he goes, "No, you sound like bacon." And that's bacon right there. That's Matt Durham. And so Mr. Durham, who happens also to be the chair of the Oconee County Council, if you would come up, please, share your experience.
So I've had the nickname Bacon for about 20 years. I got it in college. It followed me to my next work assignment by coincidence, and then it followed me to Duke Energy again by coincidence. It started off as Dur Bacon because it was Durham. They shortened it. When I decided to run, people at work told me, they said, "If you don't put bacon on the sign, nobody will know who you are." I said, "Well, that's probably what I need to do, put everything's better with bacon," right? That'd be a good slogan. But thanks for having me tonight. So I serve as the chairman, have the honor of serving as the chairman for the Oconee County Council. The chairmanship is elected from within the body, so we all represent 5 individual districts. Mine's District 2, which is the Mountain Rest, Walhalla, West Union area. And I won the primary for my second term in June, unopposed for the November primary, so Lord willing, I'll get to serve another 4 years. So I just want to start off, big crowd. How many folks here are born and raised in Pickens County? All right, so we have a few, and I share that with y'all. I was born and raised in Pickens County. I grew up in 6 Mile, graduated from Daniel High School, and if you asked me about 20, 25 years ago, I would have told you I was born in Pickens. I'll die in Pickens County. But love makes you do strange things. I met my beautiful wife, and she swept me off my feet and carried me across the river into Oconee. And we live up in Mountain Rest in the Whetstone Valley. If anybody ever been to the horse camp out Earlsford Road, that's where we live. And it's a beautiful area, and hopefully that'll be where I spend my remaining days. And so I'm assuming the rest of you folks moved here, right? So what made you move to Pickens County? Property taxes, right? So conservative governance keeps taxes low. Right, okay. So it's a common theme. So we have in Oconee County, just like Pickens County, we have a lot of people moving to the area from all over the country. And with my position, I get to meet a lot of people. Campaigning, door knocking, as mentioned earlier, that's honestly one of the biggest blessings of campaigning, is staying on people's porch and talking to them and hearing what drives them, what affects them. I think if it was possible for high-level offices to do door knocking like Lindsey Graham, I think it would change the whole perspective on everything. But when I talk to people, they moved here, even my neighbors. My neighbors, closest neighbors are 300 yards away in Mountain Rest, but I have neighbors from Wisconsin, Michigan, upstate New York, and South Africa. And they're super strong conservative people, and most of the folks I talked to in Oconee County who moved here from blue states, they was escaping the blue tyranny. They moved here for conservative values, for conservative governance. They look up, hey, South Carolina's a red state. They know we got low property taxes. And most of them, they want to come here and they want to preserve that. Now, there's some, they move here, and they very quickly, maybe they moved here because they couldn't afford to retire the way they really wanted to, where they came from, but they move here and they very quickly want to start changing things to policy of where they came from. You know, what made them flee that. And we see that at the council chambers quite a bit, and I'm sure y'all do too here in Pickens. So, like I said, it's crazy times we live in. You know, our nation was founded on truth, right? It was founded on God's eternal truth, absolute truth. And the times we're living in now, and I believe that's some of what the previous speaker spoke on, is the truth's been inverted. What was good is now evil. What was evil is now good. What was right is now wrong. And what's wrong is now perceived as right. And you hear a lot of talk about we want to save America, right? The number one way we save America right now today is we got to stand for the truth, right? We got to stand for God's eternal truth. Because as a people, you can't self-govern if you don't have absolute truth. So we got to stand for truth in our workplace, in our schools, and more importantly, in our homes. So, and I imagine a crowd this size, Republican Party, there's people that's, thinking about running for office. If you're not already standing for the truth, don't run for office because we don't need you, right? A friend of mine, he said, not only do we need good people in office, we need good people with a backbone, right? Because when you get in office, it's brutal. I'll just be honest. The errors, they come, and they don't stop coming. You got to have a strong backbone. You got to be willing to stand for the truth. That's what we need. And it all starts local. I talk about it in the home, but it starts local. Everybody focuses on D.C., Joe Biden, Lindsey Graham, even a local senator, Nancy Pelosi. They watch Fox News, but they're completely unaware of what goes on right underneath their nose. And in Oconee County, we have a conservative group we formed, I talked about here in a minute, about 4 years ago. But our primary mission, what we say is, if we're going to save the nation, it starts at home. We can't save America if we can't first save Oconee County. So we've been successful in moving in 4 years of sustained conservative movement. We've had ebbs and flows, we've had wins and losses, but we've been successful in moving the county conservative. And the way we've done that is through contrasting, right? The biggest fear, the biggest enemy of a rhino, and y'all know what rhino is, Republican in name only, and if that term offends you, then you're probably a rhino. So the biggest enemy to a rhino is a Republican who's actually conservative, because the contrast between the two exposes the rhino for who they are. So that's what we've been successful at in Oconee County. So when I ran first time 4 years ago, I ran as a conservative. I ran as a bold conservative. I believed that the county electorate was conservative. That's what I felt based on, who I talked to. Most people agree the way I did. Prior to, most people run campaigns, they kind of straddle the fence, don't want to offend nobody. But then you really don't know how they stand, how they feel. They put Republican by their name, but you don't really know how they feel. So I ran as a bold conservative, strong conservative, unapologetic, and was fortunate to defeat really a lifelong politician by about 30 percentage points. So we go into office. Winning the election is the easy part, right? If you campaign, that's difficult, but once you get in there is when the work really begins. And we was in the minority, conservative. Now, it's a 5-member Republican board. If you hold elected office in Oconee County, you're Republican, right? Because anybody with political aspirations in Oconee County know they have to run as Republican to win, whether they hold those values or not. So when I went in with myself and Mr. Glenn Hart, who's sitting in the back there, Glenn was entering his second term at the time, and we had our backs against the wall, pretty much from the beginning. But when my eyes was really opened up, was my second month in office, we brought forward a resolution, a simple resolution that was pro-life. And the resolution stated that we believe in protecting life from conception to natural death. And there was some wording about working with a pregnancy center that's in the county, foster homes, to create a culture of life in the county. Now, I was naive. I knew we had a split a little bit in the council, but I was naive. I thought a 5-member Republican council, this resolution would pass easily, and it did not. It fell 2-3, with Glenn Hart and myself the only ones voting in favor of it. So Democrats, they came out to speak against, and it was pretty eye-opening of what the speaker said. It was eye-opening to see that kind of evil exist in your own county. One lady, she spoke, she said, well, poor people commit most of the crime, and poor people have most of the abortions. So if we work to limit abortions, then all we're doing is increasing the crime rate 15 to 20 years down the road, because we're going to have more criminals born. That's some of the stuff we heard. And it was voted down 2-3, but what it did was it opened up people's eyes in the county. Everybody looked, everybody assumed, hey, I'm in red Oconee County. In 2020, we was the second most county to vote for Trump percentage-wise, right behind Pickens County. Everybody said, hey, I got all Republican councils, nothing to worry about. But that resolution opened people's eyes up to say, I need to start looking at this. Maybe these guys aren't who they say they are. We go forward about another month, and we have this ordinance coming through, and it had passed first 2 readings. We got to have 3 readings to pass the ordinance. And the ordinance essentially turned the whole county into an HOA. Every major highway in the county dictated color, facade, brick, and it was crazy. And Glenn Hart, we voted no against it, and Glenn said, well, what are we going to do? And I got thinking about how people were upset after the abortion resolution. They don't pay attention beforehand, but they paid attention once it was too late. So I said, I believe the people in this county is conservative. I don't believe they will stand for their property rights being taken like this. I said, but we just have to let people know what's going on. So we took to social media, reached out to the local media the best we could. I believe Glenn may have even went to the radio. And we got people out, and they flooded the council chambers. This was during COVID. They filled the chambers, filled the hallway, the parking lot. We had a radio, and they voiced their concern, and they voiced how they couldn't even believe that an all-Republican county council would come up with something that would take their rights in this way. And through their participation, they was able to convince 1 vote to sway, and we defeated that ordinance. And for the next 2 years, really, the people were mine and Glenn's 3rd vote. Right? We didn't have a 3rd vote. We couldn't move the ball forward, but we could at least stop some of the crazy stuff that was going on. Talk about during COVID. I came in during COVID 2021. Right off the bat was fighting mask mandates. Fought it within the county. Was defeated in that because, again, we had the minority. Fought the city of Walhalla, who's in my district on it. But that right away, starting that January, it really put a target on my back, right? With the local media, they filled up letters to the editor, 3 or 4 pages. I was the next Hitler. I was killing little old ladies because I didn't want to force people to wear a mask. So we go forward after that ordinance was defeated, and we said, it's not good enough to just get people at the last minute. A good friend of mine, David McMahon, was a retired sheriff's deputy in the county. We was talking and said, we got to get organized and stay organized. Because the left in our county, now this is probably, 35% Democrats, but the left in our county, they stayed organized. And they have various groups and avenues and that they will work through. And the Democratic Party for years will work to getting Republicans elected as Republicans on county council. And they did that under the radar. I'll fast forward in my story here just a minute. One thing we did was they were exposed that. In the last county council campaign, the Republican Party chairman, we got it on video, he did an interview, was sitting down with the Democratic Party chairwoman, and he said, we're going to work together to defeat the conservatives on county council. Now think about that. Think about if Bob did that, right? Y'all probably run him out of the room. Right? So the same woman who came up espousing this stuff about we need to murder more children, he's sitting across the table from him saying we need to work together to defeat the conservatives on county council. So by us being consistent, we expose some of the stuff that's been going on for a long time. We forced them to say the silent part out loud. So back up to 2021, we decided we needed to organize. We got a group together, about 100 people, just word of mouth. We met at a diner in Walhalla after it had closed. And we just had the discussion of, everybody was concerned Donald Trump just got kicked out of office. And it's like, what can we do? And we had a discussion. The only thing we can control is right here, what's underneath our feet. We cannot control D.C. So we said, we're going to start right here. We said, America First starts in Oconee County. And a group of 100 people grew to 2,500 strong today. It's an organized nonprofit political organization whose mission is simple, is to move Oconee County to conservative governance. And the way you do that is to elect conservative candidates. And we've been successful at that. That first year, we got involved in the Republican Party. We didn't really know what it was. I got an email that said reorg is going on, and I told David maybe this is something we can do. And we ended up, it was at Kiwi Key that was having a reorg behind the gates there. And so many people showed up. They was out on the highway. People couldn't fit in. We had to reschedule it. They rescheduled. We went another day where they could house the people. Took the party that year, and then over the next 2 years, that's when the attacks really started. And I could stand up here and tell you all, but to be honest with you, I could write a book on it, and y'all would think it's a fiction book. But they used lawfare. They weaponized the judicial system, the justice system, everything they could try to do. And 2 years later, we lost majority control of the Republican Party because a lot of people were just, they didn't want to deal with it, right? They didn't want to deal with the slanderous attacks that come from it. But we got to have, somebody spoke earlier, Bob, you got to stand, right? You got to have the backbone to stand. But then I think that was part of revealing it because if Jim Mann hadn't got elected as chairman, we wouldn't have been able to expose what's been going on for years when he sat down on video and said the silent part out loud. So I believe God uses everything for a purpose. But during that time, we pushed forward 2 years. We win a county council seat to gain a conservative majority in 2022. Don Miles won the District 3 seat, I think, by about 17 votes, 16 votes. I'm not sure somebody who's with me can remember that. But you say that's a slim margin, but Don's district is the Seneca area, and it's the most liberal district we have in the county. And Don had some personal challenges he was dealing with. He was recovering from cancer during the campaign, wasn't able to campaign a whole lot, had sick parents, and we were still able to win that race by 17 votes, the most liberal district in the county. We said, well, now we're cooking with grease, right? We got a majority off the most liberal district. That's right, cooking with bacon. So once we got that majority, I said, well, now it's time for us to show what conservative governance looks like, right? Campaign is the easy part. It's once you actually get in office, and then once you truly get a majority, you can do something. Now's your time. You got to do something, and every decision you make affects people's lives. So we came out and we tried to get a budget. One of the first things we did, try to get a budget that was under control. Our budget for the previous 7 years had increased by 50%. That was more than double the pace of inflation and population growth in the county. And I'm a fiscal conservative, but I realize too that budgets are going to grow as you have Bidenomics and inflation, and you have people moving into the area. The county operating budget is going to grow, but it should not double that pace, right? The county government should not double the pace of growth of your local economy. So one of the first things we did was we passed a budget that was under that metric of population growth and inflation, and then we later passed an ordinance that said future budgets can't exceed that number, so future councils can't. Now, in certain emergency situations, they can. It takes a supermajority to do it. So not just 3 councilmen shoving it, down the throats. With that, too, the sheriff for years, right? So number one goal is protect life, right? That's the most fundamental right we have, protection of life. For years, the sheriff said, I need more deputies to patrol the county, but don't give me more deputies unless you pay them more, because he constantly had openings. He averaged 17, 18 openings at any time. Prior council would give maybe a $300 or $400 raise. I mean, their health insurance rising costs would eat that up. So we certainly immediately gave them a $7,000 raise. The sheriff's department today is fully staffed. We also took other measures. We provided now extra protection, new personal armor for them, and we placed ballistic windshields in all their vehicles, right? And that was actually a very small cost relatively, because the technology has really changed over the years. You think about glass that thick, and especially going forward with new vehicles, it'd be very easy. But we wanted to set the stage, too, to say, if you're law enforcement, we want you to want to work in Oconee County, right? We want the best to come to Oconee County to work. We did the same for emergency services. We probably trained half of Pickens County's firefighters, right? We will train them. 3 months later, they will leave. So we had to raise their pay, and now we actually have certified firefighters who want to come work in the county. Also roads. Is y'all's roads in Pickens County in great shape? So, in Oconee County, I'm sure it's the same in Pickens. The most problem spots is the state roads. But like I said, you control what you can. We can't control the county roads. And during those 7 years when the budget increased by 50%, how much do you think the funding to roads, county roads, increased by? Absolutely 0%. Did not increase at all. So immediately we increased funding to roads by 47%, and we signed the largest paving contract in county history. And now we did all that without raising taxes, right? It's through proper fund allocation. We put the money towards the needs first. We also just changed the way we budgeted altogether. We transitioned to a more fund-based budget, and one reason the budget grew was state law in South Carolina says your general fund budget has to match revenues. That's a good thing, right? It keeps you from deficit spending. But on the downside of that is, as your revenues increase, like we've seen with rising property taxes, your expenditures now also have to increase. And the way the state law works for that general fund, you can't prepare to save money for future years. So we switched to a more fund-based budget where we broke out non-operating expenses into fund accounts that could grow a balance so we could plan ahead. We put $1.2 million last year into the new fund that's Emergency Services Capital Equipment Fund. This year when we set the mills, we're going to put another $1.3 million in there. And we're going to buy fire trucks now with cash money, whereas before that money would have been spent on who knows what, and we've been left to borrow the money for the fire trucks. So it gives us a powerful tool to plan for the future. So that's some of the things we did immediately. You know, conservative governance. You got to work quick. Election comes in 2 years, right? People wanted results. It kind of makes me think of a story a friend told me. He said a mayor just got elected to a town, and as he took office, the outgoing mayor gave him 3 envelopes. And he numbered them 1, 2, 3. And he said, when you get in hard times, open up these envelopes, it'll tell you what to do. So he was in office a few months, difficult time came, he opened up envelope number 1, and it said, blame the predecessor. So he went out there, he blamed his predecessor. Everybody got calmed down, went back to normal. A few months later comes by, he opens up another envelope, they get in trouble again, opens up the second envelope, and it says, blame council. So he goes out there, he blames the council members. Everybody calms down, they back off. Some more months come by, everybody gets fired back up over another issue. He goes to his desk drawer, pulls it out, opens up envelope number 3, and it says, write 3 letters. So you got to do something with the time that you have. So that's what we did. We tried to stay strong on policy. Once we had the opportunity, we implemented conservative policy. We stood on that policy, that contrast exposures. And then this last June, we actually replaced the 2-term incumbent on county council, and we now have a supermajority of conservatives on county council, and that guarantees us for another for 4 years, right? So we can really do some good things. And our goal is to make Oconee the freest, most prosperous county in the state, right? We want to light that brush fire of freedom and let that freedom be shown and it spread through the whole county. We get say of South Carolina then it spreads to the country, a bottom-up approach. That's right. Yep. So, and it's important too. So I understand y'all have had a council majority swap in Pickens County. Is that correct?
We have good times with that.
All right. So I imagine some of y'all in here helped them get elected. So I want to say this right now. Your job ain't done, right? Don't get them elected and then let them go to the wolves. Because once they get in there, they're going to undergo immense pressure. So stay with them, stay behind them, hold them accountable, right? Encourage them, prop them up. Don't just leave them, right? The work's just now starting. You help them get elected, now you got to help them be successful. And I've been lucky. I've had good people behind me to help me all along the way, and quite a few travel with me too here. And these folks have lifted me up in dark times. We've celebrated good times together. I'm gonna try to recognize everybody. If I forget somebody, I apologize. But Women Rights Representative Bill Whitmire. He represents South Carolina House District 1. Beside him is Adam Duncan, who will be the next representative for South Carolina House District 2. He defeated a 30-year incumbent on a shoestring budget, and that was possible through 4 years of effort of contrasting and standing on principle and consistent messaging. Right beside him is my main man, Mr. Glenn Hart. Glenn is a Vietnam War veteran. He's a true American hero. He was a combat veteran in Vietnam. He won't tell you much of what goes on, but I've been around him enough to know that I'm sure thankful I haven't had to do what Glenn had to do. He's also 80 years young, and he still land surveys and climbs mountains every day and swings a bush axe. Next to Glenn is Mr. Dave Nix. Dave also works at the nuclear plant. He was a senior reactor operator, and now he's a procedure writer. And when you get elected in Oconee County, you get to appoint people to different boards and commissions. And I really sweated on who I want to put on these boards, because I wanted somebody with a backbone who could stand, especially the planning commission, which was an important one. And one night, Dave Nix came to my mind. I called him the next day. He said, well, let me think about it. 4 years later, he probably wishes he thought a little bit longer on it. But he's been right there with me the whole time, and he's also on the board of directors for the Oconee County Conservatives. He's one of the founding members. I would have Steve Black beside. Steve's also on the board of directors for the Oconee County Conservatives. And then Tony Adams. He's known as the old-time P Rambler. And Tony is probably the reason why I'm here today. Tony does a lot of writing and informing and educating people on the goings on in the county, and I kind of started following and conversating with Tony, and I'm certain that I wouldn't be here today if not for Tony, and I still talk to him despite that. So, and in front of Tony is Grant Keene. Grant serves on the Walhalla City Council, and he is a man who is not afraid to stand alone. They have some issues in Walhalla right now, and he's standing boldly and pointing them out amongst a lot of backlash, but that's what we need. We need men with a backbone who's not scared to stand. And then Mr. Bob Hoover, he is our vice president of the Oconee County Conservatives. And beside him is Lynn and Paul Heck. They also serve on our steering committee. So it's important to organize within the party, right, because the Republican Party is the dominant party. We also feel like it's important to organize outside the party, too, because a group of conservatives organized outside the party can do things that the party can't necessarily do. But God's been good to us in Oconee County. We've went through some immense struggles. I said maybe one day I'll write a book, but I don't know how to write, so I don't know how to do that. I might need to get Tony to help me with that. He's the writer in the group. But I truly believe that our brightest days are ahead of us. Right? I believe that people are waking up. We got to stand for truth. Right? We got to fear God. Right? It's a spiritual battle. I talk about the attacks come. It's a spiritual battle, and the devil don't play fair. Right? And I believe if you stand up and you stand out, the devil's going to come for you. And we've certainly seen that in Oconee County. But by the grace of God, we're still standing. And I believe in Pickens, Oconee County, we can light that brush fire of freedom and spread it through the whole state. Thank you.